Hey, it's been a minute, but I'm happy to be back, and I have an interesting story for you guys. So, over the past 3 weeks, two people have offered to buy my car. The first person was a petrol attendant at a gas station very close by, and they offered to pay me 30,000 Rand for the car. And it wasn't like a great offer for what it's worth. It was bought for in 2017 for 75,000 Rand. So I don't think it's deteriorated that quickly. But besides the point, that was the first person that offered me. But more interestingly enough was the second person. The second person that offered to buy my car was the person who did the roadworthy test on it. So a little side road, but to get my car roadworthy, I had to take it to this place, and they basically would drive the car onto this track, and they would put the wheels onto these spinning thingies, and then they would rev the car really high and get it to accelerate, and then they would basically test to see if the car can get to a certain speed. And then the next part was that they would move it over to this basically this hollow pitch where someone can go underneath, but they would basically drive the car into these four different metal plates, and those metal plates would move and like shake the car, and it was basically just trying to see if the suspension worked, I guess, or trying to see whether it would survive all of that different impact and stress on it. So the person who went underneath my car to see if everything was fine, did the test, accelerated it, even took it for a little spin afterwards to make sure, all the lights and stuff works. He came to me afterwards, and I was sitting in reception watching this. There was a huge window where you could see everything that was happening inside. And he takes the car out of the warehouse and takes it for a spin. And the reception is glass all around it, so I could see him driving. I was a bit nervous because he went a bit quick, but he came back in front of the reception and he started flashing my lights at me. So I was a bit confused. I don't know if it was still the test that he was doing, but then I looked a little bit closer and I could see him in the window calling me over to him. And so I ran over to him, and he pulled down the window and he says, "How much?" And I was like, whoa, I was expecting him to ask me for a bribe or something, but I'm glad he didn't. But he wanted to buy my car. And I asked him right then and there, I was like, well, how much do you want to pay? And he told me, no, that's like asking someone how much or if they're going to shoot themselves. That's not fair. And I said, well, I want to see how much you'll shoot yourself for. And he ended up telling me that he would pay 70,000 Rand for the car. So the petrol attendant offered me 30,000 Rand, but this guy offered me 70,000 Rand. And I had such a click in that moment. And even looking back, I've realized the big lesson from that is that, different people will perceive your product or service differently. And so they'll value it differently as well. The guy who did the roadworthy test, he saw everything there was to know about the car. He knew it survived the stress test. He could see it was in a good shape. He took it for a spin. He got the full education of it to see what works in it, what doesn't work. And so he could value it accordingly without any other information. Whereas the petrol attendant, he's just looking on the outside of the car. He looks and sees it's a bit shiny, and so he wants to go with a very low ball offer. But I think that was the most interesting part for me, was that there's two different people who priced it differently, but there was an information asymmetry there. The one guy had no to little knowledge, and the other guy had an abundance of knowledge, and so he valued it accordingly. And so, what takeaways can I take from that for my own business, and I'm sure for yours? Well, the first thing is that when I'm pricing something, the price necessarily isn't the problem with the customer not buying or choosing to step away. The real problem lies in education, which is showing the benefits, showing the value, whether it's saving time or money or adding a status to that person. Having a car is a status item. So that's the first point, is to say, pricing isn't necessarily the problem, and the price won't make sense for everyone. But for those that it does make sense for, who understand, who are the market, that's where the real education and the benefit comes from. So that was a big takeaway for me, to see that, when you're pricing your service based off of your own time or a certain deliverable, it actually isn't that important what everyone thinks of it. What's important is what your ideal customer will think of it. And so you need to take their feedback into account and then work around the pricing. So it might be too high for your target demographic, but maybe that isn't the right demographic. And for my own experience to share with you, I've created this LinkedIn sales course called the Social Selling System. And essentially what it does is it takes people from the beginning to the end of how to use LinkedIn to make more sales. So that's your profile, making content, and then lastly, it's actually the outbound sales strategy of going out there and finding clients. And I had a huge debate with myself, and I still do, about the pricing, because I priced it initially at $75, and I thought that wasn't a bad deal. But then I started getting feedback from people. I started sharing my website, trying to get critical feedback, and with a certain group who I would label as my target demographic, they started to share with me that the pricing seemed a bit too small for the amount of value that it's promising. So there was a bit of an asymmetry there between the pricing and the value that was offered. And so that doesn't necessarily mean I always need to price higher if it gives value. I mean, there's a lot of examples where people price lower even though it offers tremendous value. But it was good feedback to me that it's actually very short on the scale of where I could price that will give a reasonable indication to the person viewing that this is something worthwhile to buy. So, interesting example, and I thought that would be useful to share with you. I'd love to hear below if you've had any problems or similar experiences with pricing and trying to figure out the right thing to do, or any strategies you can share. I think that's been an incredible lesson for me so far. But yeah, thanks for coming. I'm going to post that link below if you want to go see it, and then let me know your feedback. It's now priced at $125, which I still think is very conservative, but I'd love to hear what you have to say, and then we can chat again when we see each other next. All the best. Cheers.